I secretly devoted weeks of my life to beating this Hollow Knight boss on the hardest setting possible. This is the story of how I discovered that I had a nemesis inside of Hollow Knight, and how I eventually beat him. Spoiler alert, that process, beating Grey Prince Zote on Radiant difficulty, caused me a lot of pain, and it was quite the journey, and I'm going to share that with you today. But first, I need to catch you up to speed. This is Zote the Mighty, and this is Grey Prince Zote. Zote the Mighty is a lowly traveler, one of the least interesting people that you meet in all of Hallownest. He is a useless homewrecker, and I hate him. He's a joke of a character. But the Grey Prince is like Zote, except in all of the ways that Zote is a failure, the Grey Prince is a success. Grey Prince Zote is Zote as he wishes that he could be, or as she wishes that he could be. I spent most of the game literally forgetting about Zote. Like, I actually saved him from the Vengefly King, beat the Vengefly King, forgot that Zote existed, and walked out of the room. When he showed up at the end of the first Colosseum, I laughed my ass off. Oh, it's Zote! Of course. It's me versus Zote? Are you shitting me right now? That's so cute. I even really enjoyed getting to talk shit about him back in Dirtmouth when he showed up and started wooing my woman. Bretta fell in love with his stories, his lies, his talk of greatness, they were all lies, his fantastic personality, he's a fucking self-centered son of a bitch. That's fine, I decided that he could have her. Sometimes you have to let love go and see if it'll come back to you. Sometimes you gotta be the bigger person. Shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. Smell my goddamn Axe body spray, you weirdo. Smell it, smell it. I would pogo you if I could. I had more important things to do anyways. There was this infection spreading all the way through Hallownest. I went on my way. I beat the game, I saved Hallownest, and then I took a little trip to Godhome to try out these things called the pantheons. After some struggling, I think I had to get my feet underneath me for the pantheons. I finished the pantheon of the master, and then we blazed through the pantheon of the artist. I was actually pretty shocked at this one. We got it on our second attempt, and I think a lot of people have that experience with Pantheon too, but still, it was really confidence-inspiring. Then I suited up for the Pantheon of the Sage. I was feeling great. I had all this momentum behind me, and all of that came grinding to a halt in this moment when I realized who I was up against. 3 health! What? I'm fucked. What? Is it just me, or does he not seem very hard right now? Ah, okay, he's hard, he's hard, he's hard. Ah! Let's just take a moment at this point to thank our friends over at Team Cherry, who did a really kind thing. If you, during your Hollow Knight playthrough, go out of your way to save Zote, if you save Bretta, if you then also defeat Zote at the Colosseum of Fools, you find your way to Bretta's basement and defeat the dream version of Zote. If you do all of those things like the good completionist little bug that you are, then you are rewarded by having to fight a completely optional Grey Prince Zote inside of Pantheon 3. To make a long story short, this is where things went really bad. I stalled out hard against Grey Prince Zote. I spent a few weeks trying Pantheon 3, practicing Zote, attempting to put this motherfucker in the ground where he belongs. Attempt after attempt after attempt. I couldn't beat Prince Zote. Or if I did, I'd have 1 health left and I'd die immediately afterwards. He was so inconsistent, and I was so inconsistent against him. I was getting really frustrated. Oh, I'm gonna lose it! That was so bad. Fuck! So that's where we were. I had already beaten Nightmare King Grim. I had defeated the Trial of the Fool. I had beaten the game. I was at 110%. And I was stuck behind Grey Prince Zote. I told my chat that I was giving up on the Pantheons. I told them Zote was frustrating and random, and I told them that I was giving up on my hope of beating Pantheon 3 and going for 112%. That was a lie. In my free time, starting the very next day, I started practicing Grey Prince Zote. I became obsessed. And this is the part of the video where I show you how my obsession went. I immediately started spending a lot of time in the Hall of Gods in Godhome. I'd done a little practicing here during my pantheon attempts, but for the next month, I was about to live here. Throughout the day, if I had a free 10 or 15 minutes, I'd squeeze in a couple of Zote attempts. In Godhome, the bosses have 3 levels of difficulty. To oversimplify things a little bit, at attuned difficulty, the boss hits you for 1 damage. At ascended difficulty, they hit you for 2 damage. On radiant difficulty, if the boss hits you, you are dead. The run is over. My stupid goal was to beat Zote, one of the hardest bosses in the game, on radiant difficulty. To start off, it was not pretty. I died a lot. Like, a lot. It did not look very promising for a long time. For example, look at this clip from one of my early runs. Ignore the face cam, I didn't mean to record that. Obviously, I've left way too many of the Zotelings alive, so they're crowding the arena. Then I miss a pretty easy pogo, and I start spamming my Descending Dark spell. Also, Zote gets stunned, and I don't take the opportunity to heal, partially because of the charms that I have equipped, but we'll talk more about that later. Then I take damage to one of the bombs, because I don't really have a strategy at this point for how to clear those. And then I basically panic spam Descending Dark the rest of the time. I told you it wasn't pretty. But over the course of those many deaths, I started picking up on some details. Zote has 6 kinds of attack. He has a normal jump, where he jumps around up to 3 times. He has a nail jump, which makes one side of the jump more dangerous to be on. He has his signature run, which is much faster and more dangerous than his Colosseum version. And he has his big fall, where he falls from the ceiling. He also has 2 attacks where he summons minions. In one of them, he spits Zotelings out, and in the other one, he causes 4 bombs to show up on screen, which will then explode. I also noticed that this traitor now blushed for Zote instead of for me, and if you go fight Zote inside of her basement, she gets really worried when he gets damaged and not when I do. I'm handling the breakup super well. I never even loved her in the first place. I started putting all these details together into a strategy. I mostly practiced the attuned difficulty during this stage, but I did start to experiment with ascended. The double damage made me play it a lot safer, only going for the sure hits, quickly killing Zotelings so that the situation didn't get out of hand. That caution was exactly what I needed to learn. Zote punishes aggression rather than rewarding it. Playing a little bit safer was actually enough for me to get a win on ascended difficulty. I started trying to wrap my head around a radiant run. At this point, I stayed at the same skill level for about 2 weeks. I had plateaued. I could get a few ascended victories a day, and all of my attempts were much better, but I was struggling to be ascended twice in a row, or last longer than 30 seconds on Radiant. Still, I put in the time each day, and each individual move got a little bit better. My timings got cleaner, my dodges easier. I was close, but I wasn't close enough to just grind it out and hope for the best. I needed something more. I went back to the drawing board and I took a look at the charms that I'd been using. One thing I kept noticing was that when I would stagger Zote, my Weaver Song spiders immediately damaged him, ending the stagger state and leaving me no time to heal or regroup. I used Weaver Song because, when combined with Grub Song, it meant that every time my Weavers ran into Zote, I gained a little bit of soul, effectively keeping me topped off on soul all of the time. I also used Spell Twister and Shaman Stone to get the most out of that soul, and Unbreakable Strength for more nail damage. I had made this whole build around the idea that I always needed to have enough soul to be able to de-dark my way out of a bad situation, and the sort of infinite soul glitch of Weaver Song and Grub Song was the best way to do it. But that was just an assumption that I had made, and sort of on a whim, I tried out a new combo. I kept Shaman Stone and Unbreakable Strength, but I added in Soul Catcher and Quick Slash. This was a big deal. I had basically never used Quick Slash before this moment. It was going to mean entirely relearning how to play the game moment to moment. That's not even an exaggeration. I maybe had 5 minutes of Quick Slash experience, And if I was going to lean into quick slash, that meant leaning into nail damage. And that wasn't what I was doing up to this point. I spent another week relearning how to fight Zote with quick slash. It was immediately obvious that this was a build that would work on attuned and ascended difficulty. I could get in 1 or 2 heals every time he staggered. I always had enough soul to D-Dark or fireball away his bombs, but I wasn't sure if it would work with Radiant, where I'd have to play a lot closer to him than I was used to in order to get these nail hits in. But I kept trying it. At the end of that week, I had mastered the fight. I'd put in a lot of hours perfecting each of the different dodges and finding ways to sneak in new nail attacks. I could beat Zote every single time on ascended difficulty. I wasn't perfect 100% of the time, but I was perfect most of the time. And if I wanted to have a chance of stringing together 2 minutes of perfection in order to beat him on Radiant, that was what I needed. At this point, the fight was clicking for me. I knew I had picked the right charms, and it was just time to go for it. Each night, I sat down at my computer, loaded up Hollow Knight, and did a few ascended runs to warm up. Then, I would die repeatedly to Radiant Zote. My dog Hero actually became my buddy during these hours. Each time that I died, I would throw his ball, and then while I was playing, he would bring it back to me and wait patiently for me to die again. And then I would grab his ball and throw it, and we'd repeat the whole process. And then one night, maybe an hour into attempting to beat Zote on Radiant difficulty, this happened. The incredible thing about what you're about to watch is that I had actually been alternating between Radiant and Ascended attempts because I wasn't doing very well on Radiant attempts, and I just felt like I could use the practice. So I just kind of clicked the button to start this fight, and I didn't see which one I clicked. It turns out it was a Radiant attempt, but I didn't know that. All I was doing was trying to avoid getting hit. I almost get hit right here by this flail attack. It's not a very clean fight. Like, there's some sloppy mistakes in here, but none of them led to me getting hit. You can see me trying to keep the arena clear of bombs and Zotelings, and honestly, I just mostly played it pretty defensive. I can remember thinking at the time, Ryan, you really need to practice being a little bit more protective of yourself. You need to stay farther away from him and just play it slow. I was truly in a practice mentality. I was like, you know, we're not there yet, but we're going to get there real soon. I had no idea how soon. All these hours of practice, and I still haven't stopped dodging in real life. This is when I realized that might have been the run. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. What? Oh my god. Yo. Oh my god. I did it. I can't believe it. Oh. I had done it. I celebrated like a crazy person after that. I took my shirt off. I ran around the house. When my wife got home from her very real job as a medical provider, actually saving lives, I told her in excruciating detail how I had destroyed my video game enemy. I even threw Hero's ball a couple times. The story was finally over. Except when I started working on editing this video, I would take breaks and I would open up Hollow Knights and I would take a little trip to Dirtmouth. See, it wasn't enough for me to just beat him. I needed him to know who Bretta's heart belonged to. My boy, Great Prince Zote.